Hey, good afternoon. I know you're all itching to get onto the happy hour, so we're going to keep this panel short, concise, and hopefully pretty fun. I'm TK Arnold of Media Play News, and before we introduce the panelists, we're just going to talk about windows. If anybody doesn't know what windows are, besides those shiny things in the back, they are the chronological order in which films and TV shows are delivered.
I'm a little confused. I thought we were talking about Windows XP through Windows 11.
Never mind him, folks.
Oh, sorry. Apologize.
He'll be in Branson next week. So anyway, back in the old days of home entertainment, before streaming took over, everything was very rigid. You had movies would come out in theaters, and then exactly 90 days or 3 months down the road, they'd be available on video cassette and DVD in what used to be known as the lucrative and profitable second window. And then they would go on to pay TV and cable and all the other platforms that existed back then, which weren't that many. About 5 and 6 years ago, we had the twin barrels of the proliferation of streaming and the pandemic. And the old formula was thrown out the door. Streaming pretty much took over as the first window and the only window. And then in the fallout that happened and the alphabet soup of streaming variants that arose, AVOD and FAST, TVOD and SVOD, we began seeing a whole new pattern of windows. We had more platforms than ever, and it took everybody a while to rejigger windows. And the focus today is going to be on the independents, because the major studios, they've kind of gone back to a lot of the old formula, and they all have their own proprietary streaming services. So today we're going to be focusing on more independent product and how best to maximize both the revenue potential of content across different platforms and better the consumer experience. So I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves, largely because they know themselves better than I do, and also because I always have problems with Kyle's last name.
Thank you.
So let's
sound it out.
I know. Let's start it out right here with Yolanda.
Good afternoon. My name is Yolanda Macias. I'm the Chief Content Officer for Cineverse, and it's a technology and entertainment company. My team is responsible for sourcing movies and series globally for all forms of distribution. That includes theatrical, physical media, digital, which includes transactional, SVOD, AVOD, and FAST. And I'm happy to be here.
Thanks. I'm Bryan Crocker. I'm the COO, CFO of Multicom Entertainment Group. We're a global independent content distribution company. We've been doing this for about 10 years, and we specialize in buying libraries and doing full service, beginning to end restoration of physical elements from physical into digital.
I am Kyle Kaczmarek.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, I hope so. If you want to go for bonus power, it's Kaczmarek is actually in Polish there. There you go. No, Poland. Okay, anyway, Kyle Kaczmarek, KDMG, CEO, co-founder. We specialize in distribution, IP representation, brokering, a little M&A, and we started moving into retail with FAST, and we have an OTT build that's starting next year.
Hello, I'm Mitch Mallon. I'm founder and CEO of Stadium Media. We are a global digital distribution company. That's it, digital. No hard goods, nothing. That's it, digital. But I've been in the space since 2004, seeing all of the ups and downs and transitions, and I'm glad we're talking about Windows again.
Okay, let's start our conversation with, now that we know what windows are, what is an effective Windows strategy, and why is it important? What's the end goal? Yolanda?
The end goal, obviously, is to maximize the revenue for a series or a movie through all ways that you can monetize and that an end user wants to interface with that piece of content. So we're all independents here in this panel. I think we really draw on our strength of agility and creative maneuverability. So there is no formula. We haven't had, most of us have not had a sweetheart deal that the studios have with exhibitors, with Pay One networks or SVOD. So we've had to be really nimble and creative and anticipate where the audience wants to interface with content, and that includes physical media. We should do that as well. So maximizing revenues and profitability and meeting expectations of the audience. I would say one other thing that Cineverse specifically did, so we have 70,000 pieces of content. So it's a large responsibility how to best monetize it and curate it. But we leaned into technology, and we purchased a company who were the architects of our end-to-end streaming service called Matchpoint. So we offer low-cost delivery in conjunction with maximizing revenues through those windows in order to improve profitability back to the licensors.
Yeah, I'd just point out, so you mentioned the rigidity of what windowing was in the not-too-distant past, and I think for indies specifically, and obviously today compared to 5, 10 years ago, that rigidity is completely gone, right? And like Yolanda mentioned, everything is an ROI question. It is, how can I make the most money for this content that either I own or that I represent for my licensors? And the exclusive deals you could get 5, 7 years ago from Netflix don't really exist for indies anymore, other than very, very small exceptions. So now you might get an offer for exclusivity from a Netflix or a Hulu or an Amazon, and you're constantly having to do the math of, is this deal going to get me more money than if I forgo that offer and put it up on a dozen different platforms and put a DVD release, sorry Mitch, I know you're digital only, or if I'm putting this on my own fast channels, is there a better ROI for my company by keeping this content sort of windowed in my own ecosystem? So everything depends on whether it's a feature or whether it's episodic. It depends on whether it's what genre it is. Documentary is going to get a different type of offer than a scripted drama feature. So you're just constantly having to do the math. And years ago, it was the no-brainer, take the big check. A couple years ago, you kind of were questioning, you had to do that math, you had to be really good at it, and now it's almost always that exclusive deal is not worth it, and that windowing is really within your own sort of ecosystem.
Well, let me ask you, because you had mentioned that, different titles go different places. Are there still titles where you just throw it out there?
Yeah, for us, I won't speak for anybody else, but specifically, we specialize in unearthing catalog titles. So think movies of the week. They're on ABC back in the 90s and 2000s. These had a run. They were well produced. They probably had a star or two, someone who's famous today that were in it when they were young. They were never transferred to digital. They were stuck in a vault in Burbank somewhere, and we found the elements. We bought the rights, restored it. It's kind of a new release to us, and the people watching it either have some nostalgia value or they've never seen this Mark Harmon movie from 1995. So we're finding ways to sort of unearth that stuff, and we will occasionally get an exclusive offer from a streamer platform for that because they're treating it as sort of a new release because it's not out everywhere and it has some value to them. But that's more of an exception than the rule.
Okay, Kyle.
Yeah, I agree with my esteemed panel here. For us, KDMG has just found its own kind of niche where, I won't say it's a niche, but we very much operate as a pull over a push. So anytime we pick up a title, we always apply the old tried and true 80-20 rule. So we're always looking at where's 80% of our addressable market before we even acquire a title. And also, we kind of have a democratic approach to it. So everyone pretty much weighs in a bit on what we think the title, are we passionate about it, what do we think we can do with it. And when the windowing play comes in, is, we're still in the cable space, but we also will, I wouldn't say bifurcate, but come right to ad AVOD. It really depends on the title. Again, going back to the 80-20, you have to look at where's your addressable market and how are you going to best target them? Because the old adage of just throwing titles out there, that's dead and gone. That's not going to come back, right? So, and a lot of times consumers don't know what KDMG is. I don't want them to. I want them to know about this particular title, who's in this title, and so on. One of the biggest challenges, I'll just say real quick, was with us last year is we had the last interview of Burt Reynolds before he passed. He literally passed 2 weeks after the taping of that. And one of the biggest challenges we had is, we know we know all Bert's movies. We grew up with that, right? But when you have Gen Z, which are so aggressive and that, huge consumers, they have no idea who Bert is, let alone what he looked like present. And so how do you do that? Because he's, older and frail in this documentary. So how did we translate? How do we connect that? And what's the proper windowing to get the best reach and ROI? That was challenging.
And Mitch?
So I look at things a little differently. 95% of my titles go out transactionally. Don't even think about it. They go transactionally out there specifically because I want that data. Because I'll have those surprises where I'm like, I may think I know a film and how well it's going to do, but I really don't know. But I examine that data, and if something seems to get legs, well, that thing may stay out transactionally exclusively for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, because I'm doing well, and I don't want to put it out there in the market. The transactional portion to me is most important because it's impressions. Because if we do go to the Amazons, even the Hooplas, the Microsofts, the Googles, the YouTubes, how many millions of eyeball impressions do I possibly have out there that will seed for our AVOD partners in the future? So that is the purpose of the first window for me.
Well, that brings up the question of data. Earlier today, Whip Media talked about a data initiative to basically get some transparency and some statistics about FAST channel and who's actually watching what, besides what every company says in a press release every week. That so-and-so has 8 billion eyeballs or whatever. How important is data, and what challenges do we face in getting good data? Kyle?
That's probably 99%. Data it's like Mitch saying, is so vital because that is the only lens we have to really understand consumer adoption, consumption rate, just any type of quasi-crystal ball that we can potentially get a gauge on where the market may be shifting or pivoting, right?
Right.
Back in the day, I can't believe I'm saying that, but back in the day when we had the windowing, like true traditional windowing, we all could say, okay, well, if we take this title, it's a genre film, it's got this person starring in it, it was this production, okay, boom, 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 I'll probably end up with this much money, great. And you put it out. You can't do that today, especially as an independent. So I live by data. So we have a couple sources that we use. Then we bring it in, and then I kind of did my own little bastardized version of a glorified Excel database type of thing to manipulate the data so I can get a sense of what's going on. But I personally would have loved to have more access to data. And I think, I'll just say this. I don't know how, well, I do know how. Take Netflix, a publicly traded company, and they can dictate, say, oh, by the way, Q1 next year, we're not going to give you our subscriber data anymore. Sorry, SEC. How? Why? I know the answer to that. I'm just saying.
Rhetorical.
Yeah.
I was just going to bring data back to windowing. So clearly, I think we all have to rely on data, right? And Cineverse, we're very data focused. There's an entire team that is focused on ensuring that we understand the data that's coming in. It's not standardized, and really normalizing that, and then providing that information back to the salespeople and to acquisitions, so we know what's performing, what's underperforming. So I feel like because we have our own channels, we have a little bit of an advantage of understanding performance of content, but also the data helps us back to windows in extending windows or compressing windows. So transactional is usually the first window, and it does give a lot of insights. And if it starts to kind of come down, then we know it's probably time to open it up to other windows. We use it across the board and specifically on strategy around windows.
Right. It all goes back to that ROI question, right? If you don't have good data, if you don't know how to use the data that you have, it's impossible for you to answer that question, is this deal that I have on the table better than what I could do otherwise? It's impossible to answer how much should I pay for new content because you don't know how it performs. And we talk a lot about Netflix, and you mentioned them. There was a lot of data from the Parrot folks in their presentation a few minutes ago. And full disclosure, I spent 7 years working there, and I know Ted has made some comments on Windows, so to try to bring it back there, I think that instilled this sort of desire to get more data. And as indies, I know I don't have access to the level of data that a Netflix has or an Amazon has, but that doesn't mean that it's any less important for us to take everything that we can get, which is why we keep talking about these working groups of standardizing data, because we all get the same reports from the same platforms, and some of them are great, and some of them are massively lacking. And when we try to say, is it better to put my content up on Tubi and Roku and Zumo and Pluto all at the same time, or should I stagger those releases because there's a different ROI for each platform? We don't get enough data from most of these platforms to be able to make that decision as intelligently as we should, and that should be something the platforms want to give back to us too, because it makes them successful. If our content does better on their platform, they're doing better as well. And we don't have that back and forth yet, I think, especially in the indie realm that we're all in.
I mean, part of windowing is being a better partner to all of our partners. That's what the purpose is, because if you, like, we're going to talk about Terrifier, but Terrifier, God bless, we all want something like that. But we don't have those, so we're to build our story so that when we pitch to our platforms, who are now curating even more, that we have actual true stats that we can have them feel comfortable about picking up our films. And the transactional window, which is clean, that's the beautiful thing about transactional, helps us get a better window into what we're trying to do with them and get the return on investment and elongate the window for them. If you can continue to have revenue coming in for our licensed partners for years, then that's the best job we could do. That's what we try to do. You don't want it on and gone in 18 months. You want it 3 years in, 4 or 5. Then everyone benefits.
Right. So transactional gives you the best data. Is there any trend or shift towards standardization in the FAST and streaming world? Because, I'm not even sure what constitutes a view on a lot of these platforms. Is it 2 minutes? Is it 30 seconds?
Well, we went through that. We went through that in 2008, 2009, 2010. In the early days of it, where it was, we're going to pay you on 3 minutes, we're going to pay you on 5 minutes, we're going to pay you on 6 minutes, we're going to pay you on 10 minutes. So it's like same scenario.
Yeah. Do you have any hope that there will be?
Oh, it'll always come. It'll always happen. It's just there's an explosion of fast channels, just like there were platforms. When is it going to retract a little bit? Really, it has to come there. There'll be the ones that benefit and the ones that don't. But I don't think we're there yet. I think we're still experimenting. That's how I get a feel of fast.
Right. So, are there any trends that we can talk about in windowing? I mean, Mitch obviously has said that transactional that's his first window. Is that the case with everybody? No.
Yeah, I would say for us, we look a lot more, and we definitely do the same kind of thing, right? We're looking at transactional first because that's good ROI. It gives you some idea of whether title is going to be good, when you should release it wider. But for us, we do look at a lot of short-term sort of exclusive deals, and this could be for content that has been out. We've got it out in 5 different places, and a platform will come to us and say, hey, we want a 6-month exclusive. You got to take it down everywhere else. And that's something that's becoming more common, and I think 5 years ago, we'd never even imagined that would be a thing that people would do. It's like, this content's been out. You want us to take it down off of YouTube and all these other places, and you're going to do a 6-month license, and you're going to promote it, and figuring that out is sort of the new thing for us. And I would add, my next sort of secondary to that is with all the proliferation of FAST, and where we have a couple FAST channels, we're not as deep in the space as Cineverse is, so we look to folks like Cineverse as content partners of saying, hey, do you guys have windowing strategies that you're utilizing on your FAST channels where we can provide content to you that fits in whatever strategy it is, and how does that work? Or do you window a channel itself and say, we have an exclusive deal to put this channel on Pluto's EPG for a year, and then we can put it on all these other EPGs? That's another windowing scenario that I think is going to start to emerge if it hasn't already.
Yeah, just to follow on that, is that we what we learned from the exclusivity with Netflix is that we don't want to do long term. So you don't want to do long term any longer. So shorter terms, even a month, we've done that very successfully with a platform, and we brought it down everywhere else. We have done on and off. So it's on, especially if it goes seasonal, it's on for the season with another partner. Maybe we co-license with our own streaming service and then with a general entertainment streaming service for the season for 3 months, and we take it down, meaning it's available everywhere. And then for the next season, we take it down everywhere and we do another co-license. So all of this is trial. We're all trying to learn and see which is the best strategy. And ultimately, I think it's going to end up that every piece of content does need to be curated to some extent, because we're in a marketplace where everything is moving, and I don't see consumption behavior really getting fixed in order to create a predictive model.
You know, oh, go on, Kyle.
No, I was just going to say, one of the things we do with our titles, because we're still very aggressive in the transactional space, and we want to be careful of that too, because we do also do bundling and a lot of promo opportunities. But the one thing we found that's really helpful is leaning on your social media ability. And if you know, for example, we do quite a bit with Spotify. You can get a low pay rate, and when it comes to data, you can get it so drilled down that you could say, I want this age group, I want this gender, I want this person that's interested in this. So you can get so specific, again, if you understand your target market. And that will, again, dictate to us, all right, do we stay in the transactional, or where the fall off? I think, Yolanda, you were saying where if you see your revenues dip to a certain point, the hockey stick curve is typically where, we'll shorten it. Sometimes if we do see a title that's just not performing, we'll pull it and we'll collapse the window and move to AVOD quicker.
So I have a big windowing challenge that I'm dealing with now. I've been dealing with for about 6 months, and it has to do with YouTube. Because I deal with a lot of comedians and a lot of artists, musicians, and they all have to be in front of their fan base. They have to be there. And YouTube is a great vehicle for promotion. It absolutely is, but it's got to be managed properly. And to educate these artists how to maximize revenue and windowing properly is my biggest challenge I'm having right now with my company.
And how do you do it?
Well, I have my pitch to them, which they are pitching to all of the comedians, a certain windowing timeline, which I would like them to follow so that we can maximize their exposure to their art, to their fans. I want that to go, but also give me a window timeline for transactional business to build that also, and then go into another AVOD window, but not have the YouTube window really cut into everything else we're trying to do from then on.
Can you give us an example? Because, you know, one thing I want all the panelists to do is really, give the audience some specific examples of a windowing strategy. And why don't we start with you on that, Mitch?
Well, this is a strategy I've been trying to, we're slowly knocking on the door and getting people to get there. The data is coming for me is on a comedian, for example, when a comedian does not go to YouTube, the amount of revenue we're generating transactionally is substantial. And so that's how we have to battle this. Okay, you know what, this artist chose not to go there, and they promoted the performance, and you know what, we did very well on all the platforms, and they're real numbers. So it's my partners to talk to the future comedians to go, you know what, we need to step back a little bit and be more conscious about how this is affecting the entire ecosystem of this release. It's not just, I want to get to my fan base, which you want to support them, but there's a value proposition for everything. And I don't know if everybody understands that it's a business. They have a business. It's almost like when Napster, everything started coming up, you had the 360 deals. The labels wanted to control everything about the deal, and so it's the same scenario. But you've got to have carve-outs and work with them properly so that you help them with their fan base, but also help our business as well. That's right. One particular challenge that I'm having now.
Okay, Kyle?
I'll take our title Abroad. It's our newest one, working in conjunction with XYZ. That title is a thriller, but the 2 stars are Korean. And so the dialogue has 2 points working with it. And one thing that we are doing is working with specific college campuses to do an influencer campaign to target Korean clubs in support of the film. And at the same time, we are running spots to also target that demographic to build the interest that's a lead up, and then we'll do it through the film, and then we'll lead back, roll down more or less for post. And we are definitely doing transactional, and then we have the, I would say,
How long transaction?
this one, we're probably doing what would be considered the more traditional holdback before you go to like an SVOD or AVOD. It's about 120 days. Yeah. If we see it's still doing really, really well on the numbers, then we'll stretch it out. We'll keep it out there, as opposed to bringing it to the next window.
And that's digital transactional or also physical?
That's both. So DTO, EST, transactional, yeah, TVOD.
And then where does it go after that, after 120 days?
Typically, we go to SVOD, AVOD at the same time, unless somebody steps up and says, "Hey, can we get a 30-day exclusive window or a 60?" Then we would entertain that. And that's another good reason. That's a good point too. Why people that may be on the fence, are like, "Wow, we really like it, but we don't know." If you can demonstrate strong transactional performance, that's going to help you on those later windows potentially secure that exclusive or limited exclusive, right? And I found too, when you do that, sometimes it's better instead of, I know, call me crazy, instead of that licensing fee, thank you, if you can get marketing in kind. So if you're putting dollars out, if they can match their dollars like a co-op, that's only going to boost the traffic, again, that you're already built in. So.
Okay, let's jump over to Yolanda right now with Terrifier.
Well, I hope you all have your tickets or are going to buy your tickets for Terrifier 3, which is October 11th. But today I'm talking about Terrifier 2, and it was not a terrifying experience. It was a very valuable learning experience, and we've applied a lot of those learnings to the strategy for Terrifier 3. But we didn't know what we had with Terrifier 2. So for those who don't know, it's a horror film. It's definitely a slasher. Be prepared. You really should love horror, but at the same time, it's okay not to love it and tag along, because Art, who's the villain, is an incredible performer, and you will end up being horrified that you actually like the villain. But for Terrifier 2, we did an event theatrical. So we did not think that this was we ended up platforming it because it did incredibly well in that first weekend. It was meant to be only 2 or 3 days, and then it kept performing. So then we increased the screens. We went from 500 screens to almost 1,800 screens. And we were meant to go to Screenbox exclusively. So that's our own streaming service. And we kept moving it out and moving it out. And that's the beauty of being independent, is that we don't have to hit these certain times. And we were able to eke out another last weekend before Halloween. So we came out October 5th or 6th, and then we ended up on Screenbox exclusively on October 30th first. And also, because it was an event, we weren't bound by certain exhibitor rules. And then we took it out just exclusively on Screenbox for a period of time, about 3 weeks, and then we went transactional. And then we went physical, and then we opened it up to everyone and did a deal with Amazon. And as Amazon's a general entertainment streaming service, it's complementary to our services. So our services are fandom. We are never mean to compete with general entertainment. So we really worked hand in hand with them. And then we did it for 3 months and lived together, co-licensed it. And then we opened it up to everyone else. So what we learned is that we don't need to do a exclusive Screenbox early on. That transactional is super valuable, and we should go out. We also learned that we have a great franchise, and it plays incredibly well in theaters. And it's also now 2024 versus 2021, was it? So still like in COVID times. So we're going out wide. We're going out on 2,000 screens on October 11th. And we're going to have a clean run of 45 days. Then we'll be out transactionally. We'll be on Screenbox and others. We're still having those conversations. So it's going, again, we learned We applied things that, we're willing to try everything and to do the on and off and co-license. We're willing to have all those conversations. It's now a well-known, franchise, so there are more people at the table negotiating with us.
Yeah, so I'll point to just for everybody in the room who's doing content distribution, our strategy, and this is going to sound simplistic, and it is at the heart of it, is you have to have relationships with the platforms that are willing to do that first run exclusive to see if there's a there with the new content. So we pick up about maybe 12 new features or features or episodics every year, in addition to our sort of catalog buying that we do. And our strategy is simple. You go to the Netflixes and Hulus and broadcast. You go to HBO and Showtime and AMC, and you find out, is there an offer there? Is it exclusive? What's the time frame? And every once in a while, that's the offer you take. Like I said earlier, we just recently did a deal, I think it was beginning of last year, with Hulu, where the money that they offered for our feature was well more than we would estimate that it would make over that 3-year period. So we did that deal. And it's one of the few exclusive sort of first window deals that we've done in a couple of years. But it's sort of, that is the model. We've done similar things with
And what
HBO.
title was that for?
It's called Remember Me. It's a biopic about Mahalia Jackson, and they offered a lot of money, and we were able to deliver it through a deal. We have a legacy deal with Hulu because we used to license them quite a bit of content, and we don't anymore, really.
And how long is their exclusive?
3 years, I believe. Yeah.
So it's
And they take, everything except home video they take, so it's really just, it's theirs for 3 years, but they wrote the check that we said we're probably not going to exceed that in any reasonable way without doing that deal, so.
But that's another
Still-
window, and then you start the traditional windows
Absolutely.
after,
Once
which is
that
very
window
smart
expires,
as well.
yeah.
So many opportunities in windowing. So there's no, we do everything, but there's so many variances on windowing, but you have to window. You have to. And Yolanda said in the beginning, you have to.
Right. And
We're responsible to do that.
And the theatrical piece, I mean, you just talked about a movie of yours that you have a theatrical release. That's, for most of us, that's a very few and far between nowadays, right? Even for you guys, we haven't had any theatrical release that was other than a sort of stunt exhibition with like an Alamo or something in a long time. And I imagine probably in this room, there's very few people that have theatrical as a standard part of their release now. I mean, major studios still have a hard time doing it.
I mean, there's an opportunity in the theatrical world, and I was at Art House Convergence in Chicago. I know there's an opportunity. They were very standoffish with us for years. I think they're struggling. There's got to be a way that we can figure out how we can merge us together and help each other. So that's what I'm exploring now, because it's got to be a more of a marketing position for us, with some money, but a marketing play to help get an awareness as a window. So, there's an opportunity, but how do you find the right partners within that world to understand what we're trying to do? That we're not trying to hurt them, we're trying to help them and the industry.
That's actually a good point, Mitch, about the using theatrical as a marketing hook. Because the reality, unless you get to the high rollouts that Cineverse was doing, you're not going to tip over to the side where you're actually going to make profit, right? Because it's so expensive to do theatrical. So if you can be smart about it and lever it as, okay, my theatrical is really a marketing, and if I can do a break even on that cost from the box office, great. Unless you have obviously something you can do as a home run, sure. But in terms of regular independent titles, if you do it the right way, I think there's an opportunity there.
But even that's evolved and moved and changed in the last couple of months, where I agree that, what we call day and dates were helpful to spend. You have the four-wall most of the time, so that's real money outlay that you hope you're going to make it up in the transactional window. But if you're not going to get the same kind of placement and positioning, then it's not worth spending that money.
Absolutely. But there's gotta be a way. I will find that way.
Let us know when you figure it out.
No, I will. I know exactly where I want to go with this. Exactly. And it's like, but someone's got to see that opportunity there and know. Because we all help each other. We're all part of the same community. We're not adversaries. And it seemed like it was for a long time. And we're not. We need to help each other.
It does, I completely hear, and it does feel like that tide is turning, especially with theatrical, because now people can go again, right? There's no restrictions as far as being out, and those theaters have to fill seats, And we get requests for like event-driven theatricals. Like, hey, we've got a horror film matinee we want to do with 3 or 4 movies, and they'll put ours in that and program it. We'll do that all day long because that's minimal cost. They're doing the marketing. But I think that dam might break where we get a little more ability to monetize theatrical on the indie side.
Yeah, well, I mean, throughout history, independent film has looked to theatrical as a marketing tool.
Absolutely.
You know, they give it some platform releases, hopefully get some good reviews, and then they put it out on initially disc and now digital and disc, and hope for a hit. Looking ahead, what role, if any, do you see AI as playing in windowing? This was a question, actually, that came to me over the weekend from a gentleman with a last name that is a little bit unpronounceable. Kyle.
Well, it's always interesting.
Big. Look at it this way. You've heard the story, go fishing where the fish are, the big fish, go to the big pond. You're looking at AI companies that have trillions in dollars. They're printing their own money, and it's not going to go away, right? So these AI machines need proper content in a way to educate itself, right? To get better. 'Cause I don't know if you ever do the test. I play around all the time on them, and sometimes, most of the time the AI do ChatGPT, Meta, depending who you play with, they're pretty good. But if you go in there, okay, show me a bear or show me a lizard, right? You'll get not what you think it could be like a cartoon or a caricature. So it needs to get there. So I think people that have very rich content, that's going to be an opportunity. I think the other opportunity that we're all waiting on is just to really see where AI gets on the dubbing side. Because if there's a way that we can get our dubbing costs down really, really low so it helps our profit margin, I think everyone's going to jump on that. I think we're close. But again, it needs to get smarter. So that's going to be probably a couple years there. I don't think we should be afraid is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I feel like
I think we're all dabbling in it in some sense, but just dabbling.
I feel like asking ChatGPT right now, what would you say is the ideal windowing strategy for Terrifier 3? And see what it says.
We've done that.
Okay. So, Bryan,
I would just say, I completely agree with the sort of AI use cases in general in our industry. It's data analytics and inferences from what that are easier for a computer to see with massive amounts of data and give you some insights that you can sort of dig deeper into. That'll help. The AI dubbing thing is huge, right? Getting content into other languages without having to pay tens of thousands of dollars to do it is massive. On the windowing strategy, like I said, I think we probably are a ways off before the AI is telling us this is where you should put this movie out, because there still is so much human interaction between us sort of pitching that content to a platform to take first window exclusive. If you're pitching it to a Netflix or Amazon, they're probably using AI on their side to analyze whether they should or not. So that's for sure going to affect our ability to window. And then, I guess just more anecdotally, when Kyle says they're printing trillions of dollars, it feels more like they're burning trillions of dollars right now, not printing it yet, but it'll happen.
They'll have it.
It'll happen, for sure. The money's going there.
Well, it's the old adage, how do you make $10 million? You start with $100 million.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, one thing I want to say, we have, we're in the process of acquiring a company called Pitch My Project, which helps on our IP side. Here's an example of AI. What we're doing in 2 parts is helping people cultivate their IP into a packaged product, either for funding or pickup. On the other side, for people that are film students just coming out of film school, we're encouraging them to go through the process to learn to get their script really polished, get the product, think about, your story arcs, think about your cast and the structure. AI is a perfect tool to bring in as a level, and we have that where the AI will look just on basic grammar. Sometimes you see some scripts and they're a train wreck. So that's a great way of where AI will start thinking about, this character is interesting. Maybe have you thought about this, and helping people, cultivate their idea.
So I mentioned that Cineverse is an entertainment technology company. So we're really into investing in AI. What we know is that it's nascent. We know it's a powerful tool, and it will disrupt in a good way all industries. And there are two buckets. So there's the one bucket that you're speaking about is efficiencies and cost cutting, and everybody should be doing that now. The second bucket is growth, and that's where we've invested in what we call Ava, she is a discoverability and assistant. So she's AI video assistant, Ava, to help you discover content, films and series, not just on your typical, a lot of people have done this, not just on your typical cast director genre, but on moods and tones. So if you feel that today you want to watch a bunch of inspirational movies, or the recommendations will come up, and specifically will tell you where to watch it. And it's okay that you leave our platform and watch it somewhere else. It will also understand your history and which subscriptions you have, so it really directs you to the right place. And that tool is called CineSearch, and we're going to be premiering it with Google October 8th in New York.
Okay. And, you know,
I wanted to say one more.
okay.
I know we have to share. I should be sharing it from you. In terms of Windows, so AI is a predictability tool, right? So you have X variable, and then it tells you Y. So in the Windows strategy, I totally agree with you, Bryan. We're far out from it. So you put in the inputs of a movie or series, and you say, based on these inputs, what is the ideal Windows strategy? Until it continues to have data and learn, we won't know that. We know X, we won't know the Y variable. And we won't know for a while because the consumption patterns are still moving around. So until all that takes place, but it'll get there.
Where do you see things going in the next few years? I mean, if you would have predicted 20 years ago, DVD was riding high. And I remember Bob Chapek, the former CEO of Disney, said, he goes, we're minting money. Every year we're getting double-digit gains. Until next year they weren't. And, you know, they never saw streaming coming, because while there were moves towards streaming, everything was shuttled aside because the disc was so profitable. So 20 years from now, 10 years from now, how are we going to consume content? Will we still have movie theaters? Will there still be transactional? What's going to happen looking ahead?
It's a great question. I think that there will be movie theaters. I think the experience of going to a movie of a certain genre in a huge screen with, you know, a setup that you're not going to replicate at your house is worth something. I think that's going to last. You know, Mitch mentioned earlier the consolidation that's happening. You know, right now we have the proliferation of FAST, where FAST is what we all talk about at every one of these conferences for the last how many years. There went from being a couple FAST channels to thousands and maybe tens of thousands of FAST channels. There's going to be some winners and losers there. We're starting to see it already, where the programmers that are running the EPGs are starting to get a little more ruthless and saying, hey, we're cutting out the bottom X% of performers every couple of, you know, years, months, whatever their time frame is. So you're going to start seeing some winners and some losers there, where for someone like me, who's a content provider, we're waiting for, not waiting for, but we're, you know, assuming that a time will come in the near future where if we have a certain type of genre of content, rather than trying to build our own fast channel, like a Westerns channel, where we might not have enough hours to sustain our own, we want to figure out who has the best Westerns channel that's playing in the most eyeballs on the most platforms and license them content. You're seeing consolidation in the major studios happening like crazy right now, and that was inevitable, and it's playing out. So I think we're going to consume content in a very similar way. I think the experience around how we monetize it will change. Ads will get way better. They'll get way more personalized. The ROI will get better for the advertisers and the brands that are spending the money to do it. So what you and I see when we watch a feature on Tubi, the ad that's playing on a certain movie is probably going to be pretty similar, if not exactly the same now. That's not going to be the case a few years from now. Like, we'll be seeing totally different ads. All the dollars that we keep hoping will go from traditional broadcast into digital, that we've been saying for years will actually happen eventually, and that'll kind of change the game, I think.
But will theaters and homes work together? Because for years, you know, that premium VOD was a big push. We talked about this in New York years ago,
Right.
where it's like everyone was pushing back. Well, it's happening now.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's going to be prevalent. You know what? I can't go. I'm going to spend my $25 or my $30. And with home theater systems getting much, much better, still expensive, but much more reasonable, I think that's going to be a piece of the puzzle for our industry there. I think there's a place for every value proposition in the industry. I think our industry has to get their act together about what the value is in every. You've got your premium, you've got your EST, you've got your IVOD, you've got your SVOD, you've got your AVOD, you've got your FAST. You know what? We have to reevaluate our entire business, the industry itself.
Right. I think we have to be open to change too. I mean, you know, I remember when in terms of windows, when a 3-year deal with Disney or with Netflix was common.
Yep.
Now it's unheard of.
Yeah, we're saying 10 years out, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Trying,
so I don't even
trying.
think any of these acronyms are going to exist. So these are my thoughts, and I think given Cineverse's position of owning and operating 30 streaming channels, it's about the experience. I think you used that word as well. And it's not just the viewing experience. It's augmenting that experience. So if I'm a horror fan and I want an editorial, we have Bloody Disgusting with Screenbox that's providing that editorial. Or I want to hear podcasts, so we have a podcast business. So you're augmenting and adding to that deep dive fan who wants to know more and get more of that particular category. And it doesn't even mean online, it means offline experiences. Theaters is another example of an event. Or it could be going to a music festival that has to do with that particular experience of that genre or category.
I notice we have the 0 red band of doom there on the clock, so I'll be quick.
Keeping people from their drinks.
Yeah. So 10 years, I'll say, on the theater side, I think theaters are always going to stay. What I see potentially is hearkening back to an experience of the 30s and 40s where when you went to the movie, it was like an it thing. That was like your event. You got dressed up for it. It was a premium event. You know, it was like a luxury. And with theaters now, they keep getting more luxurious. There's some you can have a full 4-course meal brought to your seat. Yeah. So I think it's going to become more of an experience. And certain films and content will go that route. Move to the other side, I think what Yolanda's saying, yeah, I think the acronyms will go away, and I think the windows will be so compressed that it'll probably be pipes. What are you having piped into your home or on your device?
That comes down to the value. There's a cost for everything.
Well, yeah.
As an industry, have to recognize that cost and not just...
I think bidding, actually, I think it'll be a part where the consumers are going to have a little bit of control where they could literally bid and say, I'll give you $1,000 to watch this right now. And it could be like just made in the can. It's hard to say, but pay attention to 3 things, or be aware. The advertisers, the agencies, they dictate and control how we're going to live, in part. Right. Wall Street, the market, they control everything. If you think otherwise, no. A big impact to our industry was the Fed. Dumb. The guy should have been taken out back and shot. We should not have had our rates that high because that has impacted our industry, which is a big debt. You know, so if you can't have access to debt facilities to do things, you're gonna cripple, right? And the biggest one of all is your consumers. They'll tell us. They'll let us know what they want.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody. And please go out and enjoy the lovely appetizers that OTT.X has prepared for us, and please drink heavily.
Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone. Thanks.